1 minute Chuck is doing a pirouette, the next minute he's delivering a roundhouse kick to the face. Some cars simply don't need an introduction. However, if for whatever reason you don't know what this car is, this is the legendary Honda Integra Type R DC2, a car deemed by many to be the best front-wheel drive car ever made. That's quite an accolade for a car that is now over 20 years old. So, can it still cut it in 2019? Let's find out. This is a sports coupe after all, so let's start with the engine. Yes, I am wearing driving gloves, get over it. This is a proper car, therefore it does deserve my special driving gloves, and I've got no aircon. So it does get quite warm in here and my hands do get quite clammy, so these are kind of necessary. Anyway, driving gloves aside, let me tell you what's underneath the Championship white bonnet. I have a 1.8 litre naturally aspirated petrol. If you want to get nerdy, it's the B18C engine, which produces 190 horsepower with 178 newton meters of torque. And to begin with, that doesn't really look particularly exciting, but don't forget, this engine has got Honda's famous VTEC system. So once you get past around 6,000 revs, all hell breaks loose. And this car revs to almost 9,000 revs. 9,000! This car revs for days, absolute days. This frantic power is mated to a very slick rifle bolt-like 5-speed manual gearbox. Work it hard enough and quickly enough and you will get this car to 62 miles per hour in 6.7 seconds, and if you have enough space and if you are legally allowed to do so, you will hit a top speed of 145 miles per hour. This car, you change up at about 9,000 revs, by which point this car is essentially howling at you. This car is very raw in its power delivery, which may not be for everybody, but my word, is it engaging. It's so involving. This car, it caters for all of your senses. Right, so the car is up to temperature now, so let's have a cheeky bit of VTEC, shall we? Right, drop it down. And here we go. No word of a lie, that genuinely gets your hearts racing. It's like a roller coaster. You go up, you get to the top, and you just wait for the drop. This is what this car's like. It's like a roller coaster, the ultimate roller coaster. And my word, I'm running out of words here already. Someone give me a thesaurus. It is so engaging. It's making my mouth dry, in fact, because it is so intoxicating. This car, it's like a drug. The VTEC is so addictive. VTEC again. Wait for it, wait for it. There we go. Okay, I did hit the rev limiter a bit there, guys. My bad, my bad. But the way how the gears are ratioed is very good, because it means when you get to 60 miles per hour, you're pretty much at the top end of third gear. So you don't need to change up again to get, you don't need to change up into fourth. You're there at 60 towards the end of third gear. Marvellous stuff. However, for me, what really stands out to me in this car is the way in which it tackles corners, because this chassis, it is simply telepathic. It knows what I want to do before I do. If this were a human, it would be finishing my sentences right now. It's so intuitive and so, well, as I said a few moments ago, telepathic. It's absolutely mind-boggling how good this car is. This is a car that you really do have to believe the hype, because it has certainly earned it, and then some. I've got double wishbone suspension all round. I've got a limited slip diff. I've got hydraulic power steering. And this car just talks to you in the corners like you simply wouldn't believe. The steering is really, really chatty. It's chattier than a talk show host, just always feeding you communication. You really do get a sense of what the front wheels are doing, well, what the whole car is doing. This car, for me, is simply fantastic in regards to feedback. There's not many cars I can think of that give you this amount of communication and feedback. The only one I can think of right now is a Caterham, which is quite funny because I've got a Caterham a few cars in front of me. And this car is so beautifully balanced. This may sound crazy, but bear with me. This car to me is kind of like Chuck Norris in a tutu and ballet pumps. The reason why I say that is because it's got the delicacy in the corners, but it's also got the raw performance of that jackhammer of an engine. 1 minute Chuck is doing a pirouette, the next minute he's delivering a roundhouse kick to the face. That power delivery, it's so raw and so intoxicating. The way how this car performs is simply... Sports cars of today can only dream of delivering driver feedback as good as the DC2 Integra Type R. How did Honda get it this right? To get this kind of handling with a front wheel drive car. It beggars belief how good this car is in the corners. You get a sense that all of the planets were aligned when this car was made, because put simply, it feels out of this world. Cheesy metaphor aside, Honda simply didn't need the planets to align because they had the right bits to begin with. At the front, as I mentioned earlier, you have the iconic B18C engine which pumps out 190 horsepower. You have a limited slip diff to give you better traction in the corners. You also have an aluminium strut brace in the front. You also have one in the boot for good measure to give better rigidity, but it doesn't stop there. To make this car lighter, thinner glass was used for the windscreen. You also have lighter alloys, and inside you have less soundproofing. But to make this car even more rigid, you have thicker metal used around the rear shock towers and the subframe. You have extra spot welds for better handling. You have double wishbone suspension, front and rear. And at the back, to finish it all off, you have this chunky rear spoiler, which is an ever-present view in your rear view mirror, and it simply looks fantastic. Now let's talk about the other aspects of the car. The seating position. Mwah! It is glorious. Yes, okay, because of my height, the steering wheel is quite close to my thighs, but I'm sat low in the car, I feel hunkered down, and it really does feel like a low-slung, sporty driving position. It feels pretty bang on. These Recaros are fantastic. They hug you in the right places. Absolutely wonderful. Now, what I will say is if you are a bit fat, you may find them to be a little bit too snug, and their headrests are really firm. They're actually quite rock hard. But was this car designed for comfort? No. So let me stop moaning about that. However, I just want to quickly touch upon the comfort. It is actually better than you may expect. You may expect this car to be a bit of a bone shaker, to be quite hard and quite harsh and crashy in its ride, but in fact it's relatively compliant. It's relatively supple as well. The pedals, like the rest of the car, have got wonderful feedback. They really give you a good idea of what's going on. The weighting of them are also pretty bang on. The positioning for heel and toe is also spot on. There really isn't that much I don't like about this car. And if it were more practical, I would genuinely think about buying one. Now, you have got a big boot, bigger than you may be expecting. It has 352 litres, but the rear seats, like a lot of 2+2 sports coupes, well, they haven't got a lot of space in them. Fine for children, but for adults, not so much. This car is monumental for quite a few reasons, but more importantly, this was the first Type R to be sold in the UK. Before then, you had the NXX Type R, which is sold in Japan only, and you also had the EK9 Civic Type R, which again was Japan only. And in the UK, we had to wait 3 extra years to get our hands on this car, because the Integra Type R was actually sold in Japan and made in Japan from 1995. Us, well, we didn't get it until 1998, and in fact, the Japanese cars, JDM, Japanese domestic market, their cars were a little bit faster and they had a different front end. Now, this may have been a big hit when it came out back in 1998 in the UK, of course, but Honda lost money on every single one it's made. And because of the way how the engine was made, only 25 engines could be made per day because they were made by hand. Now, back in the day, this car would have cost you around £23,000, which in today's money with inflation is roughly around £40,000. Thankfully though, you can pick them up for much cheaper because they are of course on the used car market. So you can get one for, well, if you look hard enough, probably about £5 or so, but that would be for quite a shabby example. For a decent one, well, you're looking at around 10 grand or so. But you know what? 10 grand for one of these, wait for it, £10 for one of these, it could well be the performance bargain of the century. And someone actually asked me on my social media, is there a better car for the, sorry, is there a better driver's car for the money? I'm really struggling. Guys, if you can think of a better driver's car for around 10 grand, please let me know. But at this moment in time, where I'm sat, I simply cannot think of one. And one thing refreshing about this car in this day and age is, of course, it's over 20 years old. So the amount of toys you have in here are pretty minimal. There's no big infotainment screens. There's no driver aids. There's actually very little in here to distract you from the actual task at hand, driving. I haven't even got aircon. Aircon was an option on this car, an option which wasn't selected, sadly. The only real creature comfort I've got in here is an aftermarket stereo, which I can plug my phone into via an aux lead. But apart from that, there's no frills in here whatsoever. But there are plenty of thrills. Ooh, yes! Yes, if it's thrills you're looking for, the Integra Type R will deliver them in spades. And it's clear to see why it has gained the reputation it has. It's raw, engaging, rewarding. Put simply, it is a masterclass. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If so, Be sure to like, subscribe and to ring my bell so you get notified every time I make a video. But until the next time guys, be sure to keep up the car obsession.